What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, presented by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network, live on the Fantasyholics Podcast Network YouTube channel. I'm Bo. This is Brant. Man, we're getting dangerously close to that season starting, Brant. We got another round of preseason games this week. We had some fun preseason games last week. The hype at this point is Shadur with the 2 dots in the end zone. But man, I just even watching the new intro video that the content guru, creation guru, Jay was able to put together for us, and seeing it something as disgusting as Desmond Ridder throwing a touchdown pass to Bijan Robinson or Geno Smith to Jackson Smith and Jigba has got me just as fired up as I can possibly be for this upcoming NFL season. I'm ready. I know you're ready. And what better way to announce that we're ready to the world than coming out with the final My Guys, if you will, episode, Flag Plant. These are my guys for the season episode after a week of fades.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be a fun one today. I want to say that was my live reaction to the new intro. You just got it shifted over to the cast. It was phenomenal. I got super excited. I know you saw me down there in the left-hand corner. I didn't get gypped. There's Seahawks in this one this time. It might have been Geno, a former Seahawk to a Seahawk, but I'll take it. Absolutely. That was phenomenal. Great job with that. Getting that moved over. It looked phenomenal. You said Jay put that one together.
Yep.
It looked great. Shout out to Patrick for helping us get it shifted over and everything else and getting it up. And it's good to be back. It's my guys. You and me were talking. I mean, we were messaging back and forth. I might be a little red. I was sitting out there baking in the sun at some softball, and I got there a little late, so I got all the sun I could never handle. But you and me were messaging back and forth, and this was kind of hard. Like, we went through, and we're like, I got my first 2 right off the rip. Boom. And then I was like, wait a minute, where do I go from here? And then I started doing a little more thinking. I don't have much notes. I'm going out of guts with the rest of this, which we all know there's a lot there with this fat boy. So I'm super excited. I actually do like all these guys. And I really, it got, as I sat down and started writing them down, I definitely got really into my guys.
Yeah, in years past, Brant, there's been a guy that I've just felt going into each season is so disrespected that it was easy for me to, have some kind of a passionate take. And I did. I texted you and I was like, man, I'm absolutely struggling here because we're doing this very similarly to the way we did the fades last week. We've got a guy from each position that we really, really like, and then our number one overall, like, this is my guy for this year. And for me, it was tough because all the guys that I really, really love this year kind of appropriately ranked. The one I ended up going with, or I'm going to go with, is a guy that I think it's really hard for there to be a whole lot more value there. But we'll see if I can sway you on it when we get to it. But I'm ready to get into this one, Brant. I'm ready to plant some flags and see which way the wind drifts them.
All right, absolutely. Let's get right into the quarterbacks. I planted this flag, and I'm going to say I planted this plant, and now I'm going to water it, and I'm going to stick with this. That's Justin Fields as my quarterback. This is my guy. I think he finishes inside the top 5. I think when we did our rankings earlier, I had him at number 6, and I do believe that he's going to finish his top 5. We saw some good things out of him during the preseason with his rushing touchdown, his ability to get the ball down the field. I do know that he's had some hiccups in practices and during training camp, but that's going to iron out. In my mind, I think it's going to iron out. I don't think this guy is going to go throw for 4,000 yards like a Lamar Jackson, but I do think this guy is easily capable of having that huge rushing upside, running the RPO there and for the Jets. I do believe Justin Fields is going to finish as a top 5 quarterback this year and really plant his name into the Jets starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. It is still the Jets, so I can't say for the long-term future, but the foreseeable future.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've got me quite there yet, Brant. He definitely did have a strong showing against the Green Bay Packers in week 1 of preseason. That rushing touchdown he scored with the, I don't even know who the running back was. I think it was
Isaiah Davis.
Isaiah Davis with the beautiful, like, over the shoulder fake to clear the corner. But yeah, I mean, as far as a passing quarterback, I don't know, but we all know the Konami code, if you will, that rushing upside for quarterbacks definitely, is something to get excited about. And it is what it is, even though I think he's personally a little overrated at this point. Still somebody I like quite a bit. Garrett Wilson is probably the best wide receiver Justin Fields has ever played with in the NFL. Obviously, there's that college connection. So we'll see if that translates to the NFL to some success and what that looks like going forward. Obviously, Mason Taylor, the tight end there, the rookie, I think there's some, some strong buzz there as well. So, maybe a decent little pass catching group for Justin Fields there. Maybe he could put some together, a 10 touchdown rushing season. And then, if he had 20 passing touchdowns, 12 interception season, maybe it is something that we're talking about at the end of the season, how good he was for fantasy. So it'd definitely be interesting. That flag is a flag that you are leaning on heavily. So I'm interested to see if that flagpole hangs out for the entire season. So for me, Brant, I was going with this quarterback anyway, and then I felt downright disrespected when I saw where he's currently at in sleeper rankings for this season. And this quarterback is currently quarterback 26, and it just felt like a dagger to my heart. And that's Michael Penix Jr. And listen, it feels homerish, and that's fine. And small sample size. We still don't know all that much about what Penix is going to look like in the NFL. What we do know, though, is week 18 last year, him and Bryce Young put on an absolute showing in the game of the week in week 18 last year. He was quarterback 7 on the week in fantasy that week, which, again, week 18, I know not all the quarterbacks out there played, but he did have 21 completions, 312 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, and he did add a rushing score that week as well. And listen, let's be honest, out of the quarterbacks that are down in that 20 area, anything 20 and after, you'd be hard pressed to find better weapons than what Michael Penix has. He's got Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts or whatever. But we'll move on from that last one just because it hasn't hit yet. But man, as a guy who watched a lot of Michael Penix down the stretch those last 3 games and really was excited at the end of the season, even though we missed out on the playoffs in a week 18 last minute deal with the Buccaneers beating the Saints to clinch the NFC South. I was excited about what I'd seen from Michael Penix and was excited rolling into the season. I think Michael Penix is a guy that if he can produce at the rate he produced even in those last 3 games as a consistency over the season, you're talking about a guy who's got top 12 quarterback upside, quarterback 1 in fantasy, especially if you're talking in a small sample size, getting a rushing touchdown in week 18. If he gets 4 or 5 of those next year, plus, has 25, 30 touchdowns in the air, we're going to be talking about a really successful season for Michael Penix in fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a great core. I love it. You said that sleeper had him at 26. Is that where you had him?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right. I want to make sure we're looking at the same league as I talk about this next guy. That's my dog. So I absolutely do love. Been
there, done that. My dogs like to chime in as well, Brand. It happens to the best of us. We'll keep moving.
Well, we're talking about a former Husky, so the Husky's going to chime in back here.
Sure, of course.
Just let it in. So I do like Penix. Let me hop in. The dog threw me for a loop because she doesn't normally bark. Let's go into my running back, and I am going to bring up a guy that's going outside the top 50 running backs. And do I think he's going to be the RB1 on his team? No, but he's going to be that 1B. And there's been a lot of talk of him already. And I feel like I've already talked about this team once today. I'm going with Braylon Allen. We saw him average, I think it was let me double check this. 4.1 yards per carry in the first preseason game. I get it at the preseason games. He had 8 carries, 33 yards. He looked good. He looked explosive. I do believe that he is going to be the biggest beneficiary of the RPO offense there in the Jets. I think he's going to find the field just fine. He averaged over 3 yards per carry last season when he did see the field. I know, Breece Hall was there, but I think Braylon Allen's going to carve out a real nice role. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him, and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to say he's going to finish as a top 30 running back this year. And he's going at number 57 right now in the sleeper for his projections.
Yeah, okay. This is one that I will get on board with you here, Brant. I think there's a strong chance Braylon Allen is the RB1 at the end of the season. I think Breece Hall is I'm kind of out on the Breece Hall thing. I know it was super sexy the year he came back from his ACL, but man, you watching the preseason at him missing these wide open holes and just how painful it looks him running the ball. And the coaching staff, the regime in New York now has no ties to Braylon Allen. They have no ties to Breece Hall. They have no ties to Isaiah. It's going to be may the best man win. And right now, it seems like all things are pointing to Braylon Allen, who's still very young, very strong, a very north to south runner, somebody who I think Aaron Glenn's going to fall in absolute love with, coming from that Dan Campbell bite your kneecap style, system that was there in place in Detroit last year where he's coming from. I love Braylon Allen, Brant. I can't say he was necessarily a guy that I wanted to plant my flag on just simply because I do think he comes in and explodes this season, but I own a lot of shares of him, and I don't want people coming after him because I don't know what the trade value is for him right now. I did trade him away in one league, but I kept him in a lot of others, and I think Braylon Allen could have a really sneaky good season. Worst case scenario, I think he sees that David Montgomery-esque role for the New York Jets.
So I want to put it out there. We're both high on Braylon Allen, so if you're coming for him, you better send a pretty hefty offer for Braylon Allen.
At Birdman, and Fantasy Holics 3. Braylon Allen.
I did just make a move to acquire him in one of my other dynasty leagues. I did acquire him, and I was extremely happy with that pick.
Okay. All right. Here's another guy I'm trying to acquire in a couple leagues at this point, Brant. This is a guy that I was obsessed with coming out of college, and just kind of fell off of him because of his landing spot, because at the time he was behind a bell cow fantasy running back, but now he's kind of turned into a little, sneaky RB2 play every week. And that's Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers, currently RB19 on Sleeper. But last year, Brant, coming off of his best season, he finished his RB14. So, he's already being disrespected from what happened last year. And the Panthers go out and add Rico Dowdle, and that's supposed to scare me off of Chuba Hubbard. And again, Chuba last year finished his RB14, Brant, with missing 2 games. Now, this is also interesting. He is pretty involved in the pass catching game in Carolina. 43 receptions last year. He only found the end zone once out of 43 receptions. I think for sure the pass catching upside goes up a little bit. I think he finds a few more maybe plays in the red zone, maybe gets in the end zone 2-3 times for catching the ball. And then if he has another 10 touchdown season out of the backfield, I think you're going to be very, very happy with Chuba Hubbard. And let me just add this too before we move off of Chuba, or I pitch the ball back to you to hit. I think that Carolina offense is going to be much improved from where they were last year, right? Which only helps the run game. Going into the last season, it was, old as dirt, Adam Thielen, and then a relatively unknown wide receiver core and Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, Jatavion Sanders. Now we're moving into the season where it's like, okay, Jalen Coker had himself a pretty good little season last year, right? Adam Thielen has shown us it ain't over the hill just yet. He's still very, very relevant for fantasy. And now they go out and add, in a lot of people's mind, not necessarily mine, but in a lot of people's minds, the wide receiver 1 in this year's NFL draft class. I think that offense gets a little bit better, and therefore Chuba Hubbard's touches become a little more valuable as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what they're doing there in Carolina. I know that, that's in your division, so you're not a big fan of seeing what they're doing football wise, but fantasy wise, they're doing everything right. They got the decent line. It's not going to be the number 1 offensive line, but they're protecting. Bryce Young's getting rid of the ball. Chuba Hubbard's handling it. Now they get to spread it out. I absolutely love Chuba Hubbard going forward, which kind of stinks for what fell in my lap last year and Brooks, who just can't stay healthy. So I'm going to move over to the wide receiver. This is a guy that very well, and he looked phenomenal in his preseason game with 3 receptions, 50 yards, 16.7 yards per reception. That's Calvin Ridley. This guy, he's going outside of the top 24 wide receivers. So he's going outside of wide receiver 2 area, and Cam Ward just showed the world how much he trusts Calvin Ridley already. That was week 1 of preseason where I don't think he completed a pass on his first drive, but then came out, went 3 for 3 to Calvin Ridley. And the second drive, he goes, all right, I got to get my rhythm going. Who am I looking at? Straight to Calvin Ridley. Looked good. Loved looking at him. And I think that's going to continue all year. And we know the Titans are not going to be winning too many games. So that ball is going to be in the air. And Cam Ward's not going to be coming out because he's got to learn this NFL pace and everything if he's going to be that future. So he's going to try to keep Calvin Ridley involved. And I think he finishes inside the top 12 this year.
Wow. I honestly looked at Calvin Ridley a few times for this, Brant, because again, I felt it was a little disrespectful how far down he was on the pecking order, on sleeper wide receiver rankings at this point. I'm getting a little extra look into it this week because they are the joint practice with my Atlanta Falcons, and I'm on the Twitter, reports every day for that. And the battle between him and AJ Terrell has been awesome this week. They've, one route it's AJ winning, the next route it's Ridley. So definitely been interesting to hear that. And obviously, as a former Falcon who was great in Atlanta, I have no ill wills against Calvin Ridley. He didn't spurn us on a public TV show, if you will, even though I still love Julio Jet Jones too. But anyway, yeah, I think Ridley's going to have a fun season. I think a lot of it's going to come in absolute garbage time, kind of in the way like DJ Moore did a couple years back in Chicago. They weren't really a team that was worth watching, but for fantasy, the numbers were there. I think that's kind of what you see for Calvin Ridley. Now, this, Brant, for me, might be the most passionate take you're about ready to see here. All right. I think you're going to be completely on board with this one. This is a guy that I had inside of my top 10 wide receivers a few weeks back when we did that episode. And he is at wide receiver 31 right now on Sleeper. I get it. There's some hesitation with this guy. Rashee Rice is being absolutely disrespected, Brant. Disrespected. It's blasphemous. Listen, I know Patrick Mahomes may not be the greatest fantasy quarterback. He is still the best quarterback in the National Football League. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. What that guy does with a football is incredible. I know every week it doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy statistics for him, but his pass catchers, it usually does. Last year, before his injury, Rashee Rice had weeks of wide receiver 14, wide receiver 16, wide receiver 3, and then early, like first drive of week 4 against the Chargers is when he got hurt. This guy was on pace for an absolutely insane season last year, and you really saw how important that Rashee Rice connection was with Patrick Mahomes. Now, I know everybody's going to say Rashee Rice is there, Jalen Royals is there now. Travis Kelce's not getting any younger. I still think this is Rashee Rice. And listen, we've seen the suspension come down for Jordan Addison already. Where's it at? Where's it at for Rashee, Brant? At this point, I'm fairly confident, and I can say that I don't think it's coming until next year. I know there's a little, if it comes at all. I will say that, if it comes at all, because there was a DUI, I believe, in Addison's, as there was not in Rashee Rice's. But again, that's for people more intelligent than for me to decipher. But again, at this point, I think that would already be out. That way, the Chiefs could have some kind of rapport or whatever ready to go. But again, at this point, I'm thinking Rashee Rice at wide receiver 31 is just absolutely disgustingly disrespectful. I think Rashee Rice is a top 10 wide receiver if he plays a 17-game slate. And I just can't believe that you're able to get him at wide receiver 31 values right now, Brant.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as he plays the season, the full season, or even if he plays 14 games, he's definitely going to beat that wide receiver 31 spot. This guy, he's in one of the most prolific offenses. They're going to get him the ball. We've talked about how Travis Kelce is starting to see the regress. So yeah, definitely with Rashee Rice, I'm 100% on board with that. Okay. So my tight end, I thought he was going a little lower than he is. Then I went and started looking on the other ones. And he's still going as tight end 14. So he's not being as disrespected as some of the other guys that we're talking about. But this guy is very consistent in his offense. He's never going to probably break out and be the tight end 1 again. He's had some injury history. He only played 10 games last year. That's Dallas Goedert. When he's on the field, he is one of the favorite targets for crunch time for Jalen Hurts, because you and me talk about it. Jalen Hurts isn't releasing the ball. He's not throwing it 50 yards down the field. He tries to be considerate or tries to take the easy dump off passes. And this guy, his average yards per target, and I'm just going to use the playoff games as he came back for the playoffs. 11. These are yards per target. 7.83, 14, 10.6, and 13.5. Now, he had 6, 4, 8, and then in the Super Bowl, he only had 2 targets. It shows that he trusts him. And when he goes, he missed with not count. Actually, you can count the Super Bowl. He only missed 3 catches of his targets in the playoffs. So he's trustworthy. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get you 30 points a week. Yes, he did have one last year. He did have a 32-point game against New Orleans. He's probably not going to do that. Maybe once in a season. But he's going to be consistent as long as he's healthy and on the field with the Eagles. He should easily clear that 14 spot. And he's a guy that you could probably get near the end of your draft, and he'll probably finish inside the top 8, which is fine. Nice, easy consistency. You know, you're not going to get the cheat code of Brock Bowers or Travis Kelce of the past, or George Kittle of this year. If you and me are both on the same page there, that's going to be the cheat code this year. Goddard's not going to be that guy, but he's going to be very consistent at the tight end position if you decide to punt on it.
Okay. All right. You know who could be the cheat code at the tight end position, Brant? The guy I'm going to talk about, the guy I'm going to double down on. This is my Justin Fields moment that you had a few minutes ago. I'm doubling down on this guy. Evan Ingram, now of the Denver Broncos. Again, going at tight end 9 at this point, not that low, not that disrespected. But when you consider just 2 short seasons ago, Brant, he finished as the tight end 2. 9 feels awful disrespectful. One could argue he's going to a better offense with a better, more competent coach in Sean Payton. Again, when we talked about the tight end episode, and I talked about my thoughts on Evan Ingram for this season, I mentioned a couple of different times that, you know, that Denver Broncos offense last year was missing that production out of the tight end position. I think Evan Ingram fills that very beautifully. This is a guy that's had 3 career finishes as tight end 5 or better, Brant. And again, you know, I think Bo Nix is a guy that I think will look to Evan Ingram quite a bit. I will say this. I think this guy has at least 3 weeks this season as tight end 1 on the week. And I think he's easily a top 5 tight end, Brant. And listen, I think when you talk about the fantasy football landscape as a whole, and I'm not even specifically speaking in tight end premiums because it only takes it to another level in a tight end premium league, but in just a PPR format, if you have a top 5 tight end on the season, the positional discrepancy at that position versus some of the others is so vast that you're at a weekly advance. It's almost like you're given a free roster spot week in, week out. If you've got a guy who can hang 20 at the tight end position versus you're playing somebody who's streaming, maybe has to play like a Tyler Higbee hoping for 8 points, right? So to me, it's almost one of those situations. If you can get a guy that's going to have some high ceiling games and has a fairly safe floor, Evan Ingram feels like that guy to me.
Okay. I don't hate it. I know I wasn't as high on him when we did our rankings, but it is a good offense and it is a good safety blanket for Bo Nix to have there. So I definitely could see that in the realm of possibilities. So the next guy I'm going to talk about is a guy that you saw me cry a little bit at the draft and make a panic trade right in the first round because, well, he went at the 106 and I thought for sure he was going to fall to my 107. I don't think it was a panic trade. I got a guy that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That's Caleb Johnson. This is my guy. This is my plan. He's going to be the bell cow running back. He's getting the Najee Harris workload there in Pittsburgh. And he can handle it. Let's talk about his last year of college. 240 carries, 1,537 yards, 6.4 yards per carry. Give me a second. I'll get to the touchdowns in a minute. He saw 22 receptions, 188 yards. He had 23 total touchdowns last year in college. He had 21 on the ground and 2 in the air. He caught a pass in the preseason game. I think he had 8 carries for 20 yards. Not the greatest showing, but that offense is still trying to find its identity as it had to wait for 18 weeks to finally find a quarterback to say, yes, I'll come out of the darkness to do it, even though we all knew he was. But I think that once this offense gets rolling, I think it's going to go through Caleb Johnson, and I think he's going to easily see 250 plus carries this year.
Yeah, you're not going to get any argument out of me on the Caleb Johnson thing. You and I were both in pretty unanimous sorts, if you will, saying he was kind of our 1B in this class. To even put him that close to Genty is high praise. I think he went to a very good landing spot. I will say, Brent, if there's anything that holds back Caleb Johnson this year, the one thing that I think that will be is Arthur Smith. I don't care for that man at all after what I had to witness in Atlanta. And then, you hear the rumor of Caleb Johnson missed an assignment on a play, and to show his, disappointment with Caleb Johnson, he took him out and didn't put a single running back or a wide receiver on the field and put 4 tight ends in there. With Arthur Smith, you just never know what's going to happen offensively. It'll be interesting to see how him and Aaron Rodgers get along this season. But yeah, if Arthur Smith does not hold back Caleb Johnson, I think he has. I think he has 1,000-yard rushing season. I don't necessarily want to put into context what I think for touchdowns, but I think he could easily have 1,000 yards in that offense.
Okay.
All right. So I told you before the show that I didn't write a name down for my complete My Guys thing. Still haven't. I feel like this one feels very true to me, though, Brant, and I feel like you will, agree with this. Over the last couple of years, this has been my guy. I kind of ride with him. I own him in way too many leagues, and he's really not disrespected at all at this point. He's at the season at wide receiver 9 right now, so he's definitely a high guy. But if you talk about guys outside of the top 5 already that could be higher than where they currently are, Drake London's that guy for me. Drake London is a guy that, if you just talk about the sample size with Michael Penix, which is really all that matters from last year, he averaged 13 targets per game with Michael Penix. He had, I think it was 8, 11, and 18 targets in his 3 games with Michael Penix. In Week 18, when Michael Penix erupted against the Carolina Panthers, he had 18 targets, 10 receptions, 180 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns. And again, one game. I know it doesn't define everything, and Panthers secondary wasn't great last year. But when you talk about what Drake London is capable of, what Michael Penix is, I think this offense really unlocks this year. This is a second year under offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, who I like a lot. He was one of my favorite candidates, and we ended up snagging him. I think you really, really see Drake London unlock to that new level, and it would not shock me if we came out of the season and looking back, you're like, how did Drake London sneak into wide receiver 2 territory? When did that happen? How did he get into the top 3? It would not shock me at all, Brant. And again, I don't think I would have went with Drake London if he'd have been 6 or better in rankings, but 9 was just low enough to me that it says he's an early 3rd round draft pick, late 2nd round. And I feel like you're getting a guy who could be a league winner that late in drafts. And I'm just absolutely, head over heels with Drake London. Obviously, there's some Falcons biasy there, but I will also say this before I completely turn it back over to you. I did stare at Jackson Smith and Jigba for quite a long time at wide receiver 20 in the overall rankings, just because I don't think there's a whole lot else in Seattle to take away from him. I know Cooper Kupp's there, but at his age, but anyway, I just wanted to let you know that I did consider JSN as my overall flag plant up until we clicked go live on the episode, and it was kind of, for me, I knew who I had to go with.
Yeah, absolutely. My biggest thing with JSN, I'm going to talk about this real fast. My biggest thing with JSN is a lot of talks of him being on the outside this year and learning from Cooper Kupp. Better route running, better, how to work in the slot a little bit more. So I do believe that this is going to be a slight down year for him. I do think wide receiver 20 is complete disrespect for him, but I'm going to not talk about that. I absolutely love Drake London this year. I do think he finishes inside the top 5. I think 9 is completely terrible to be drafting him at. I'm probably taking him, as a top 3-4 wide receiver because I do trust him. I've watched a lot of Michael Penix. I know what he's capable of. I know he's going to push the ball down the field. We've seen Drake London be able to make yards after catch. So that's going to be huge for this offense. And I actually like what's going on there in Atlanta. I like how the offense is running. And, I'm a huge believer in Penix. So I absolutely am going to hop on board of that, of being on Drake London.
So I will say, if you talk about the wide receivers, just real quick, that are listed in front of him, it's Brian Thomas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors into the top 4. So it's not completely crazy. I think those guys are all in the similar area. I just think that if you talk about ceilings, I like one of them a little bit better than the rest.
So while we're on the topic of where we think these guys are going, I think we need to discuss what's going to happen next week. And there's one thing you and me haven't touched on, and normally we try to put these in every once in a while, and I don't think we've done them all. I think it's going to have to be the Fatboyz hot takes next week.
Okay. All right. I can be down with the hot take. This is a thing that started, in the infancy of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast, Brant, back in 2020 and at COVID in my garage, and we did our weekly recordings. And we both were, hey, hot sauce bets if you get it wrong. And we did our shots of hot sauce at the end of it. But it's definitely one it's been a long time coming. And you're right. It is time to get that one out before the season takes place. So that will be what we do next week. We'll come out with some absolute fire next week.
Absolutely. I think that sums it up for our flag plants. Don't forget, join us live every Sunday starting week 1. Live for all the start sits and everything else. Food, anything else, fantasy.
That's the most important part.
Our underdog picks of the weeks. It's going to be, it's always fun on Sunday mornings. Don't forget to chime in and join in.
Yep, absolutely, guys. See you in a few weeks.
Yep. And as always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.